right, and 170 pounds. He could run, and he was a great athlete, but he wasn't an intimidating-looking guy. He comes out at the team meeting and says, guys, when we kick that ball off, I'm going to run down, and I'm going to knock one of those dudes out. He used a little bit different language than I'm using right now. He says, you'll see, I'm going to go down, and I'm going to knock a dude out. And we're kind of looking at him like, okay, Robert, you go do that, but you can't envision a 170-pound guy knocking someone out. Well, opening kickoff, they have, I think he's an All-American running back. Chris Samuel, I think was his name. And we changed our kickoff strategy up for that game. He didn't expect to get the ball. We usually kick to the other guy, and we changed it up. So we kicked the ball to him, and Robert Bailey flies down the field like a missile. And he launches himself that day. At that point, there's no helmet-to-helmet penalty, right? He launches himself and hits that Samuel right in the center of his face with his helmet. And Samuel he flies back on his back, and he's literally knocked out on the field, flat on his back. They had to stop the game. They had to come get him. He couldn't walk. And our team went crazy because Robert Bailey did what he said he was going to do. And at that point, the game was over. I mean, we just killed him. And then we were going to rub it in because they were all so mad at everything. And, mostly the Longhorns for what they were saying, and the Stan Thomas, they just took it out on them on the field. It was nasty. I remember, Jim Nance, who's still he's a commentator with Romo today.
Yeah.
He was just letting us have it. He was the announcer in that game, and he was just criticizing us and criticizing Coach Erickson. We had no idea. We were just out for blood, right? We wanted to we just wanted to embarrass this team on the field. We had no idea really the impact of what we were doing. We weren't act out. We were just mad, right? The team was mad.
Okay, so 46-3 was the final score between Miami and Texas. 46-3. Rashad had 3 sacks. Peter Cordero, quarterback for Texas. Peter Cordero, he was sacked 3 times, 3 interceptions, and Wesley Carroll had 8 catches for 135 yards. Despite Miami having 16 penalties and 202 yards, still, obviously, the squad was talented to overcome anything. Craig Erickson, his final game, he threw for 4 touchdowns, 17 of 26 for 272 yards. And, he went out on a great note winning that game. Now it's fast forward to his senior year, 1991, beat Arkansas 31-3. Let's talk about the Houston game. This is a hyped up game because Houston was a big time program at that time. Andre Ware won the Heisman Trophy in 1989. Then here comes this guy, David Klingler, rightfully so. He was doing his thing, but he made a statement. Your squad made a statement. Beat them 40-10. Talk about that game.
So we were taking a lot. I remember our team was taking a lot of their attention personally. They were kind of the media darlings of the NCAA at that time because of their offense. Right? It was John Jenkins, who was their coach, and had a similar type offense as Erickson, but they were putting up massive numbers, right? And Klingler was a talented player, but our team wanted to show otherwise, right? And remember, I was a captain for that game, and I forget who else was captain, but it was, like defensive linemen, I remember, and maybe a linebacker, and they're saying, do not shake their hands at the beginning of the game. We're going to make a statement. I was kind of uncomfortable with that, right? Because like I said, I'm like the golfer on the football team. I can't really take out aggression. I gotta be cool. And for me to try and be angry is somewhat of a contradiction of what my position and what I do on the field. But I remember David Klingler was so nervous, like he could see it in his eyes. I stood in front of him at the beginning for the coin toss, and I'm like, oh my God, we're gonna kill this guy, right? He just did not feel right. And I remember them going off to the locker room before the game started after warm-ups, and our crowd, it was a night game in the Orange Bowl, they were in a frenzy too, because Houston was coming in and supposedly going to beat us. They were throwing batteries at the Houston Cougars from the stands as they were going through to the tunnel and just pelting them with all kinds of stuff, but literally batteries. Like I heard one ding off one of their helmets, and it wasn't even close. I mean, we killed them. Our defense just completely dominated them. 40 to 10?
40 to 10. Yes.
Yeah, it felt like 70-0. You know, like they never had a shot.
Yeah, David Klinger was sacked 5 times, and the thing is that he came off a 9-touchdown passing game against Louisiana Tech.
Yeah.
And, yeah, he definitely was worth the hype, but didn't do a great job against your Miami fast defense. Gino Toretta, 4 touchdown passes, 365 yards receiving. 365 yards passing, 4 touchdowns. And this was a big game because, Miami was able to win against the number 10 team in the country. Your squad was number 2 at the time, and it was the 39th home win in a row. It tied Notre Dame for the longest streak in NCAA history at that time. So that's a monumental, game, win your 39th game in a row at home, and it tied Notre Dame for the second longest winning streak at home in NCAA history. Let's get into also the Penn State game. That was a great game, 26-20. Big game because obviously these two teams, have met in the infamous Fiesta Bowl, the orange fatigues and all that. Miami lost, unfortunately, 14-10 in the Fiesta Bowl in 1987. But now you meet each other in 1991. Talk about that game as Miami won 26-20.
Yeah, and remember, you're talking about how big that Houston game was, but they're all big back then. It was a lot different because we didn't have that playoff situation. So we kind of felt back then you had 11 games and you had to not only win, but you almost had to show style points because it was a voting system for the championship. And we felt like we better look good every game because it's going to matter when they vote for us at the end of the year. And so it was not only the score during the game, but it was also how you played and how you appeared to be dominant because you wanted those voters, coaches, and the Associated Press. So yeah, the Houston game did set us up, and it put us, in the place where we wanted to be. Now, it was my senior year. We had some great players, and we were serious about winning the national championship and taking it that year after that, 1990 season, which was tough with those losses. We felt we had a great team then and just kind of came up short. So we had something to prove. And Penn State, always, they were so well coached. And they had that Tony Sacca, right? I mean, he was a tough quarterback, big guy, was willing to tuck the ball, run it up the middle, take on linebackers, and he would hit. He would hit hard, and he would not shy away. This guy did not give up. That was one tough quarterback right there. And they had O.J. McDuffie, right, on the team, I think, who later had a really good career for the Miami Dolphins, had a tough defense. And yeah, I think we knew it would be a tough game. That was probably one of the toughest I had ever been in terms of watching the physicality of the offense and defense. The hits were intense. It felt like an NFL game, that game. I think either team could have won that day. They could have easily pulled that out. We were challenged. Paterno was tough.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Despite winning 26-20, the first half score was 6-6 at halftime. 6-6.
Yeah.
So it was a defensive struggle, field goals. That was all about. But then explosion of the team, special teams, and offense which took over. Horace Copeland caught a 80-yard touchdown pass from Gino Toretta.
Kevin Williams.
He scored on a 91-yard punt return, and Mark Thomas caught a 42-yard touchdown pass from Gino Toretta to make it 26-14. So offensively, Miami was able to get it going with Lamar Thomas and Horace Copeland were great receivers, and they scored touchdowns and special teams. Kevin Williams did his thing with a 91-yard punt return, so he was able to hold on. Darrell Williams was able to make a goal line interception fast forward to obviously the game of the year. Um, Obviously, it's great to have you on because this is the 30th anniversary of Wide Right One. So let's get into that, man. 17-16. You know, Florida State had control of this game. It was up 16-7. The thing about you, and this is why it's great to have you on, is that you made a clutch kick, a 45-yard field goal after Steve McGuire ran from 27 yards. That was a clutch kick because it cut the lead to 16-10. Talk about that game overall and preparation. Just look at the, get ready for that game. Just talk about that before the game, what that game was like, just preparing for Florida State. Because it's number one versus number two. It gets no better than that. Talk about that game.
Yeah, that was, it didn't get any bigger than that, and it's never gotten any bigger than that. It was it. I mean, are there games that were just as? Yes, but number one, number two in Tallahassee with that talent, that was a special day. Obviously, a very special win for us to overcome that crowd there. It was a tough place to play. Personally, I kind of had a little bit of a Rocket Ishmael challenge because they had All-American Terrell Buckley, who was a really tough returner. So I had to get ready for him and make sure that he didn't make a game-breaking play. But we made the big plays when we had to, right? Yeah, the kid missed the field goal at the end. But that fourth down conversion by Horace Copeland towards the end that led to our taking the first and our only lead of the game by 1 point. Such a big play. I remember Coleman Bell making just an incredible catch on a pass from Gino. Obviously, McGuire was a force. We were just really needing to hit on all cylinders because, Florida State had as much talent as anybody in the country. Their quarterback was All-American that year, and they had incredible receivers and running backs and linebackers. That was Marvin Jones was on that team. It was a first-round pick. They were just loaded, and to play them there, to beat them there, that required, as great of an effort as we could have, as we could have put forth. I mean, we played well. They played well, and it was an incredible ending. I turned away because the kid had made 3 field goals that day, right?
Yes. And he made 3 field goals.
Yeah, and he was lined up. I think Bobby Bowden made a really big mistake there at the end of the game and how he managed the clock and telling Casey Weldon to down it. He shouldn't have. I thought that they should have ran another play. If I'm not mistaken, I think they might have attempted that field goal on 3rd down. Or they did something weird towards the end, and Bowden, he messed up. I think he flinched there, and I think Casey Weldon even recognized it. I remember like a facial expression or some body language saying like, "What are you doing?" They could have run another play or something like that, and they didn't. In terms of you brought up my field goal, I won't talk too much about myself, but that was probably the most pressure I ever felt in a football game on that kick. Because of the magnitude. Yes, it wasn't for the win at the time, but if that kick doesn't go in, you and I both know we probably don't win that game. So I felt a lot of pressure on that one. And then later on, I had to kick off to Buckley. I was like, man, I had visions of rockets. So luckily, I was able to put that kickoff in the end zone and got a touchback. So it was definitely a game of inches. And then, by the way, our center was injured during the game, and he wasn't able to come in on the extra point to take the lead 17-16, and we had to put in Rusty Medeiros, who was a phenomenal football player, right? I mean, like he had sacks after, multiple sack games throughout his career many times, but he never really knew how to center the ball back, or he barely knew. And he went in there and did a formidable job. But I think that Kirk Carruthers, it was the guy, he came through the line and he tipped that extra point and almost made it go wide, but he tipped it enough to make it, change directions, but it just snuck inside the upright and when it went in. So we were lucky. on that extra point to take the lead. And then, the kid missed the kick. But I think Bowden blew it. As great of a coach as he was, like I told you, coaches make mistakes every weekend, and many of them. And he blew it there with Casey Weldon. It was there. They had a lot of talent. They could have done something different there on offense versus putting that game in the hands of the kicker or on the kicker's foot at that time. I think they should have done something else.
Yeah, Jerry Thomas, despite making 3 field goals, he missed field goal that could have won it for Florida State. Missed it with 25 seconds left, 34 yards kick, and the squad was number 1. And the thing about it, entering this game, Miami had won 7 games in a row against top-ranked opponents, so that was the 8th straight at that time against the ranked opponent that was number 1. 8 straight wins against the number 1 ranked opponent, so that was a big win for Miami, obviously. Now let's fast forward to the Orange Bowl. It's your last game as a Hurricane dominated, Nebraska 22-0. Talk about that game win, your second national championship at Miami, 22-0.
I think that game, there was never a doubt in our mind. We were going to go out and we were going to win, and it wasn't overconfidence. I mean, now you're talking about, by the way, I was a redshirt that 1987 year, right? So in the 5 years that my class was there, we were number 1 in 1987, number 2 in the nation in 1988, number 3 in the nation in 1989, number 2 in 1988, number 1 in 1989, number 3 in 1990, and then we wanted to finish number 1 again. So it was 1, 2, 1, 3, 1. So the worst we finished was 3rd in the country with 3 national championships.
Okay,
so we won in
87,
89, and 91. Right. So I have 3 rings in my drawer. Yeah. So we were determined to win that game. Obviously, we weren't the unanimous national champ because we shared it with Washington. We won in the AP, I think, and they won in the coaches poll. So we both ended up going to the White House as co-national champs. But against Nebraska, we had beaten them before. We just felt we were the better team. We got a whole month, more or less, back then to prepare, and we were just going to go out and crush them, and we did. I mean, that game wasn't even close. We just were the better team that one. 20-0. We could have beat them 40-0.
Yeah. Jesse Olmstead, Maryland, Derek Smith held Nebraska to 82 yards rushing. They came to this game averaging 41 points a game, Nebraska. We shut them out defensively, and they averaged also 353 yards on the ground, and we ran for 82 yards. And great game by Larry Jones, a true freshman fullback. He ran for 144 yards and a touchdown, 30 carries. And it was Nebraska's 5th bowl loss in a row. His first shutout game since 1973, 220 games ago. And yourself kicked your 3rd field goal in the game from 54 yards out in the 3rd quarter. And Miami won his 45th straight game in the Orange Bowl. So that concluded your your career at Miami. Let's get into the U documentary real quick. Who reached out to you to be on that U documentary to talk about Miami football at that time for ESPN 30 for 30? Like, what was it like being on that documentary?
I just want to mention Larry Jones that you mentioned. He's a freshman MVP of that game. So Larry was a talented guy and very deserving of that. But for him to step up for Stephen McGuire, who had hurt himself, they had taken his knee out against Boston College a few weeks before. McGuire was one of the best running backs in the country, but Larry stepping up was a big game, and it was an awesome performance by him. I still remember that. The documentary back then was a little bit controversial. The university did not condone that taping, and it was a little bit kind of underground. I found out They had to get a hold of ex-players on their own, and they were having a tough time finding us all because the U didn't know what it was going to be about. They didn't know if they were going to be portrayed in a negative or a positive light. I mean, it was both, right? That's what made it interesting. It showed some of, what Miami as a city is about and where some of these players come from, which is a tough background. But I think in the end, the message was, hey, these guys came together and they played hard and they worked hard and they gave everything they had. And we did it the right way. I mean, Miami had some issues with NCAA investigations prior to and people getting paid, and we've had that. But we were none of our players at that time. We had some issues, but they weren't getting paid by boosters. They weren't getting agents early. I knew our stars. I knew them well. These guys a lot of them knew they were going to get paid in the NFL, but they were doing it the right way back then. And so I think that's what the message of that documentary was. And it was an interesting perspective. But back then, when they were filming it, I didn't even know it was going to be. I didn't even know it was 30 for 30. We may have been one of the first ones, if not the first one. Rashad, you can look that up. But that's when the 30 for 30s first started, right around then. And I think what they showed that first one, like after the Heisman presentation that year when it came out, what was that, around
2009?
2009? Was that when it was?
I think so. I got to double check.
Nah, that might have been the second one. I want to say it was like 06 when that came out. 07. It was one of the first ones. Anyway, yeah, we didn't know.
I saw it right here. It says in Wikipedia that it premiered on ESPN on December 12th, 2009.
Oh, was it 09?
Yeah, 2009.
Okay, yeah, but it was one of the first 30 for 30s, if not the first.
Probably with some other, documentaries at that time that for 30 for 30, but that was a big one. That was one of the more popular.
That kind of started the run, But yeah, it ended up being, like I said, a really interesting perspective. They, the company that did that, you got to respect what they did. They're artists, and they did a good job of I guess, sending the message of, or showing the public that didn't know what we were about, a lot of the insides of the program, right? They did a great job, I thought.
Okay, so let's move forward. Obviously, you're done with Miami at that time in '91. I noticed that you played in the Canadian Football League and the NFL. Talk about your times in the NFL and the Canadian Football League.
Well, what a lot of people thought that my career at Miami would lead to, like a Hall of Fame NFL career. And, I was probably steps away from that. I used to train with Adam Vinatieri, and, as great as he was, he will be a Hall of Famer. At the time, if you saw me kicking next to him, you would have probably wanted me on your team. I was just a more polished kicker at the time. I was much more accurate. He then developed and became, maybe the best ever or one of the, but I maybe didn't set my sights for greatness in the pros. I was a University of Miami guy. That was like my ultimate thing. The pros was kind of an afterthought for me, and I know I just never really expected a professional career. I wanted to go to Miami, win national championships, and get my degree, and whatever came after I figured was gravy. So I ended up having a great career in the Canadian Football League, won a Grey Cup championship, played against players like Doug Flutie that, were absolute superstars, incredible players, incredible people. Doug is one of the nicest guys you'd ever meet. So I feel fortunate to have had that experience. It was great to win another title after those championships at Miami. I feel very fortunate. And then I just had an injury that kind of cost me my NFL career. I had been signed with the CFL at the time, but was probably going to go to the NFL. I did, but I never was quite the same. I got hit in my leg in the offseason playing soccer, doing something stupid, and I never really was able to come back. I went from basically kicking, 60-yard field goals, which I could hit in practice, to kind of hitting 50-yard field goals, and I lost a lot. So my career wasn't what a lot of people hoped it would be. But I feel like, hey, I made it. I played some. I played on Monday Night Football, played against the Dallas Cowboys, who were defending Super Bowl champs, and kicked some 3 field goals against them, and made it a lot further than I thought I would as a pro. So I think my career lasted between, I played in NFL Europe, the Arena Football League, the NFL, and the CFL. So I hung on as long as I could, and then finally got married and just went to work. But was fortunate, saved a little bit of money, and got my career started in business. So.
So that concludes the interview portion of the show. Now it's time to get into some Hurricane football trivia quiz. Test your knowledge about your history and knowledge of the Miami Hurricane football program. So let's get into the first question. In the 2003 Fiesta Bowl national championship game, which official threw a controversial flag for pass interference on 4th down that kept the game alive for Ohio State? Was it Terry Porter, Randy Crystal, Dennis Hennigan, or Al Matthews?
This was in Tempe, Arizona.
Yes.
That game against Ohio State.
Yes.
I was there. I was like right over that end zone when that happened. I was at that game as a fan. I don't know the official. I don't remember the official's name. I don't.
I got the multiple choice questions. Is it Terry Porter, Randy Crystal, Dennis Hennigan,
Correct.
or Al Matthews?
I'm gonna go with B. Crystal.
No, it's Terry Porter.
Damn. All right.
Number 2, Miami won its first game 7-0 in 1926. Who did they beat? Was it Amherst College, James Madison University, Temple University, or Rollins College?
Ooh, I want to say Rollins College.
Yes, correct. Number 3, which quarterback succeeded Jim Kelly as a starter? Was it Vinny Testaverde,
Bernie.
Yeah,
Bernie.
Yeah, Bernie Kosar. That's 2 in a row. You got 2 in a row. All right. Number 4, Ken Dorsey is the winningest quarterback in Miami history. What was his career record as a starter? Was it A, 35-3, B, 38-3, C, 38-2, or D, 36-3?
I think he only lost to Washington and Ohio State, so the 2. So you're C, right?
Yes, C, 38-2. Yeah, that's 3
Yeah.
in a row you got right. Okay,
Yeah.
and last question. In what year was the school's famous split yoke? Let me start over. In what year was the school's famous split U logo developed? Was it in 1966, 1973, 1975, or 1981? Talking about the split U logo.
Yeah, I know. My best friend went to the U because he loved the logo so much. So I don't know. I mean, I know it wasn't 1981. That's for sure. But so it was 66, and the next choice was 73 or 71. You said?
It was 1966, 73, 75, 81.
I'm gonna go with 73.
Yes, you got it. You got it right. So you got 4 in a row. You got 4 out of 5 right. So you do have great knowledge of the Hurricanes, man. Thank you for your time, man. Thank you for coming on the show. Call us Huerta. You've been a great guest, great info, great stories, man. Thank you for your time.
I enjoyed it, man.
All right.
Keep it up.
All right.
If I can do anything for you, let me know.
Thank you.